It's Monday, April 7th, 2025. Don't call it a trade war, but it probably is one. Democrats do what they do best, seethe, and dispatches from the old public health establishment next on the AM Update.
More than 50 countries have reached out to the president to begin a negotiation.
This is a national security problem, which we saw during COVID. Optimal supply chains are not resilient.
I am an immigrant. I am undocumented.
Each day in these last few months now creates a great sense of fear.
So the thing that needed to be done is that you needed to have physical distancing.
Everyone, especially on your side, on the left, is freaking out.
I'm not on the left.
But you got to realize we gave $13 to $15 billion a year to human traffickers.
President Trump aboard Air Force One last night addressed the continuing market fallout over his plans to tariff basically the entire world.
I've spoken to many countries. They all want to do, just so you understand the power of what I'm doing, every country is calling and being very solicitous of us. Very, very nice. They're being very nice. And we have to be able to justify. This is not sustainable. The United States can't lose $1.9 trillion on trade. We can't do that and also spend a lot of money on NATO in order to protect European nations. We cover them with military, then we lose money on trade. The whole thing is crazy. And I got elected on that basis. We explained it. You know, the American people understand it a lot better than the media. But the media understands it. And much of the media writes correctly about it, I must say.
The sky is falling. The sky is falling. If you paid attention to some voices of apoplexy and hysteria over the weekend, it was a very rough couple of days in the stock market, but it brought us down at the end of Friday to around where we were in the stock market this time last year. You would think the sky really was falling if you paid attention to some voices over the weekend who were just absolutely convinced that the world as we knew it and know it is over. I'll have more to say about those figures in Air Analysis, but first, over the weekend as well, in the midst of this, don't call it a trade war, here's Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett, who says already they're starting to see some results from Donald Trump's tariffs.
A report from the USTR last night that more than 50 countries have reached out to the president to begin a negotiation, but they're doing that because they understand that they bear a lot of the tariff. And so I don't think that you're going to see a big effect on the consumer in the U.S. because I do think that the reason why we have a persistent long-run trade deficit is these people have very inelastic supply. They've been dumping goods into the country in order to create jobs, say, in China.
So Economic Council Director on ABC News, that was Kevin Hassett, says there's already been a bunch of countries lining up to negotiate a better trade deal. Here is Secretary of the Treasury Scott Bessent with some facts.
Kristen, what I like is data. And if we look at data from President Trump's first term, and there's a big study that just came out from a group of economists, mostly at MIT, that showed that a 20% tariff on China led to a 0.7% tax or price level increase over 4 years. I think that's pretty good. If we can take in 20% in tariffs and it's a 0.7% increase. And Kristen, the little publicized story this week, everyone wants to look at the stock market going down. You know what else went down? Oil prices went down almost 15% in 2 days, which impacts working Americans much more than the stock market does.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent went on to say that this is really a much bigger problem than simple trade deals. This is about national security.
This has been years in the building, years in the making. You know, this unsustainable system, our trading partners have taken advantage of us. We can see that through the large surpluses. We can see this through the large budget deficits. And also, Kristen, this is a national security problem, which we saw during COVID. We saw during COVID that optimal supply chains are not resilient. And what I could say is the only good outcome from COVID is it was a beta test for what would happen if our supply chains got broken. And President Trump has decided that we cannot be at risk like that for our crucial medicines, for semiconductors, for shipping. And we are going to move forward so the American people can know that they are going to have a more secure future.
Again, I'll have more to say about some of the just voices of hysteria on the right over the weekend coming up in Air Analysis. I do my best to give them the most benefit of the doubt. Well, Democrats took this opportunity over the weekend to do what they do best, seethe in an Astroturf fashion all over the United States. Rallies were held. Who were funding those rallies? I don't know. What did they sound like? A lot like this.
My name is Grace Martinez Rosas. I am an immigrant. I am undocumented, unafraid, queer, and unashamed.
That is a speaker at one of the rallies saying she is an immigrant, undocumented, unafraid, queer, and unashamed. Tom Homan, you know what to do next. Here is Kamala Harris, who was almost president of the United States, I might add, at another one of these rallies or gatherings.
And these are the things that we are witnessing each day in these last few months in our country. And it understandably creates a great sense of fear. Because, there were many things that we knew would happen. Many things. I'm not here, so I told you so.
So there's Kamala Harris coming out of her spider hole to slur her way through a speech. Each day over the past few months creates a great sense of fear. Well, I sure hope people like you are living in fear, because we'd all be in prison right now, or at least on our way to the camps if you'd gotten in charge. President Trump on Friday shared video footage of an apparent U.S. military airstrike against Houthi terrorists in Yemen, including the aftermath of the devastating bomb blast. The footage appears to have been shot by a drone and shows about 70 people standing in an oval surrounding one person near the center of the formation. Moments later, there's a massive explosion, sending a fireball and a dark plume of smoke up into the sky. Trump said in a post on social media, quote, "These Houthis gathered for instructions on an attack. Oops. There will be no attack by these Houthis. They will never sink our ships again." Another strike against the Houthis in Yemen. Those terrorists trying to muck up those shipping lanes in the Gulf of Aden and other places in the Middle East. Well, speaking of crawling out of spider holes, here is Dr. Anthony Fauci on what he thinks the next outbreak, the next pandemic, will look like.
What is likely to happen, I don't know if it's going to be next year or 10 years or 15 or 20 years from now, is the emergence of another respiratory disease. It may be another coronavirus, because we know that coronaviruses really, mostly in bats, have the capability of binding to receptors that are in humans. It could be another flu. We're dealing with H5N1 now, which is bird flu, which has taken the somewhat disturbing step of infecting mammals, namely cows and cats and other mammals.
Fauci also, once again, just reminded everyone he did absolutely nothing wrong during the COVID pandemic.
So the thing that needed to be done is that you needed to have physical distancing, which, people say lockdown. We didn't lock down. China locked down. We definitely closed a lot of things down. So I think if you really are fair and stop the finger pointing, in the beginning, it was absolutely essential. The only way to immediately shut down the 4,000 to 5,000 deaths per day was to shut things down for a while.
What a freaking flat earther. This guy, every day I'm more convinced. Every time he opens his mouth, even the further away from COVID that we get, this guy is just evil incarnate. The fact that this pissant still feels comfortable saying this stuff out loud with no remorse whatsoever is an indictment on all of us, and I mean all of us. Dr. Anthony Fauci over the weekend, however, speaking at the New Orleans Book Festival, was not the only former public health establishment hack to share what he thinks is coming next as far as public health goes. We'll talk more about that a little bit later on. But first, a live-action journalist was violently attacked by a woman defending baby killing during a street interview, and the brazen assault was captured on video. Pro-life reporter Savannah Craven Anteo challenged the woman to justify her support for Planned Parenthood when the woman suddenly lashed out and punched Anteo, leaving her bloodied. Live Action published video of the interaction that showed Anteo was politely debating the issue with the woman before the attack.
Don't understand the magnitude of having a child
So that voice is the woman who attacked the live-action journalist.
I'm not the one who admitted they would be okay with killing babies in foster care and killing children that have been abused. That's not the point. What I'm saying.
Just like that. A little bit of pushback from that live-action reporter set that other woman absolutely off. Went ape. Left that live-action reporter bloodied. I hope that woman gets locked up and sits in prison for a long time. And now here's this quickly before our first break. Here is Brooke Rollins, Agriculture Secretary, joining Jake Tapper on State of the Union Sunday morning. Brooke Rollins addressing some of the hysteria from people like Tapper over the market downturn.
You've got 2 days of data. Everyone, especially on your side, on the left, is freaking out.
I'm not on the left.
But at the end of the day, listen, this whole concept... All right, Jake, thank you.
Oh, and that response was perfect. Very condescending in a good way. You don't want to be condescending for condescending's sake. You heard Brooke Rollins say, right. That was like the Jennifer Lawrence gif. Okay, yeah, sure. Jake Tapper is the Joseph Goebbels of the old regime. He is. And for him to just say that I'm not on the left. Brother, I remember listening to you the Saturday after the 2020 election. You were doing everything just short of out and out cheering like you were at a football game when the Associated Press secured and certified, allegedly, that election. This guy's just talking about evil incarnate. How can you be that unself-aware? All right, when we come back, disturbing new legislation in the state of Colorado. Another public health expert from the old public health establishment speaks out. And did we get to the bottom of what happened with Jeffrey Goldberg being added to that Signal group chat? Well, The Guardian says yes. That's coming up next.
The question before us is the passage of House Bill 1312. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1312.
Colorado House Democrats passed a bill that classifies, quote-unquote, misgendering your own child as child abuse. It could cause you, if you live in Colorado, to lose custody if you don't affirm your child's chosen gender. Colorado Republican Jarvis Caldwell is fighting against this bill.
So you can call it hate or whatever you want. I'm a parent. I love my kids. And the idea that someone is trying to pass a bill that could potentially make me lose my custody because I don't play into the delusions of a small child, that's why we're pissed off. Because you're going after our families. You are coming for the kids.
The woke isn't just being put away. It's not just going to go away on its own, and it never was going to. That's the reality of this. You would think, if you were a party that was just trying to make pragmatic decisions, strategic retreats, you would not allow something like this to fester, even at the state level. If you're the Democrat Party, you would want to do a strategic retreat right now after the man who ran on protecting women's sports ran against the trans agenda and has enacted oodles of executive orders aimed at dismantling the lie of transgenderism. He just won election after you tried to shoot him, tried to put him in prison. You would think maybe right now would be a time for some strategic retreatery. But nope, none of that. It's not being put away at all. In Colorado, if Democrats get their way there, you will lose custody of your child. If they come up to you, if your 3-year-old or 4-year-old comes up to you and says, I'm a girl or I'm a unicorn, and you don't affirm that, that is absolute madness, and it's not just going to go away on its own. Well, I talked about this now former public health establishment hack by the name of Dr. Peter Marks. He is a top FDA vaccine official who just resigned from his post. He was interviewed by CNN. I'm trying to decide if this is a threat or something else.
Also leave behind a group now gutted that was ready to respond to natural and man-made threats. Yep. At any given time, there are many, many viruses that could come, things like Ebola and others that could be very dangerous to our country. We had a group that was prepared to deal with those. Additionally, I can't go into all the details, but there are man-made threats that we were prepared to deal with. Having that capacity means that today I believe we are weaker as a nation, and I believe our adversaries know that we are weaker as a nation.
That's Dr. Peter Marks, former FDA vaccine official who just resigned his post. You know, whenever these public health establishment hacks like Dr. Anthony Fauci or this with Dr. Peter Marks, whenever they open their mouth and talk about potential future threats, am I wrong to just think, is this a threat? Are you threatening me? Are you threatening me with another so-called pandemic? Because it seems like they have pretty specific knowledge about what they're talking about, which concerns me. Now, of course, it is their job, allegedly, to identify potential future threats. But when we had a virus cooked up in a Wuhan lab, it makes me think that when they talk about potential future threats, it makes me think that maybe they're not exactly on the up and up. All right, did we get to the bottom of how in the world Atlantic editor Jeffrey Goldberg was added to that Signal group chat a few weeks ago? Well, The Guardian seems to think so. Here's an excerpt from their recent expose over the weekend on just what happened. Quote, according to 3 people briefed on the internal investigation, Goldberg had emailed the campaign about a story that criticized Trump for his attitude towards wounded service members. To push back against the story, the campaign enlisted the help of Mike Waltz, their national security surrogate. Goldberg's email was forwarded to then-Trump spokesperson Brian Hughes, who then copied and pasted the content of the email, including the signature block with Goldberg's phone number, into a text message that he sent to Waltz so that he could be briefed on the forthcoming story. Waltz did not ultimately call Goldberg, the people said, but in an extraordinary twist, inadvertently ended up saving Goldberg's number in his iPhone under the contact card for Hughes, now the spokesperson for the National Security Council. So the story goes now, Mike Waltz, National Security Advisor, accidentally saved the editor of The Atlantic's phone number underneath a spokesperson for the National Security Council and probably tried to add the National Security Council spokesperson to that Signal group chat. But because the wrong number was saved under the wrong person, actually ended up adding Jeffrey Goldberg. I can kind of see how that took place. You're on an email chain with both a good guy and a bad guy. And at the very end or the very bottom of that email chain is a number. You think that is from your spokesperson. You're not really... I can see how this happens. If you're trying to do things fast, you might think that that's actually your spokesperson's number when it's actually the enemy's number. And that's how mistakes like this get made. Hope that doesn't happen again. And now here's this. This is billionaire Democrat donor Antonio Gracias. He's now working for the Department of Government Efficiency. He told the All In podcast the Biden administration's border policies handed human traffickers how much money?
But you got to realize we gave $13 to $15 billion a year to human traffickers.
$13 to $15 billion a year to human traffickers, he goes on.
That's what the system did. And the money magnet that attracted these people here. It wasn't like it was some crisis, that, environmental crisis. The money magnet attracted these people, and many of them died on the way up. I mean, think about what that's like. Think about the human crisis. So this is a
human suffering, a human rights tragedy. You have people who are getting sold into slavery and being abused at the border. At a minimum, every American should be against that.
Everyone is. Every American is. Look, man, this turned my stomach. When I went to the border and I heard the stories, it turned my stomach, man. We are America, okay? We protect people like this. We don't give incentives to people to pay traffickers. If you pay $20,000, I heard $20,000 to $500 just across the border, $20,000. I mean, where does someone who's coming from Central America or Africa get $20,000 to pay the traffickers that are walking them across the border? It's not free to walk up Mexico, okay? It's controlled by the cartels. What happens? I mean, they got to pay that back. How do they pay it back? They're basically indentured servants. This is terrible. This isn't what we do in this country, right? This country is about freedom. And we are here to protect it. We protect it around the world, protect it in our home country. And I don't think any American that I know, none of them, Democrats, Republicans, or anyone, thinks this is good. It's not good. It's bad for America, and it's evil behavior. We shouldn't incent it. We shouldn't give people a reason to do it. We should find legal ways to come in the country. And Antonio, I think that's the way to come together.
That is Antonio Gracias, a Democrat mega donor who is a billionaire, now working with the Department of Government Efficiency, absolutely incensed after finding through his work at Doge, that the Biden administration was sending $13 to $15 billion a year to human traffickers. This is a Democrat saying this. absolutely incensed that the Biden administration was explicitly incentivizing the border crisis for the stated purpose, in his opinion, of increasing Democrats on the voter rolls. He also said, going on in that interview, he also said there is evidence that several thousands of these illegal aliens who were incentivized via money to come into this country by the cartels and human traffickers, there's evidence that they've already voted. Again, this is a Democrat saying this. That was a mess. Still is a mess that Trump is cleaning up really quickly if you look at the numbers at the border now. But never forget what the Biden administration, the Biden regime tried to do to this country. Coming up next, air analysis. Let's just chill out, try to figure out where everybody's coming from when it comes to tariffs and a potential trade war. It's coming up next. And finally, air analysis, slightly acidic, mostly necessary. Boy, howdy. If you were on the right this weekend and you just had kind of the agnostic take on tariffs, according to some people, you were the enemy. It's not enough to be agnostic when it comes to tariffs. You must be actively anti-tariff, I was told, or at least suggested. I saw a lot of really, really emotionally, let's just say, suspect takes on the tariff debate over the weekend. And I noticed that most of those emotionally untethered, emotionally unhinged takes seem to come from one side of the debate. But I think, however, after thinking about this a little bit more, I think what explains all of the apoplexy and all of the hysteria from the right, I don't care about the left. Don't care about them. I mean, Donald Trump could cure cancer. He could send everyone to Mars. He could perform miracles. And the left would still call him literally Hitler and probably Satan. Okay, so I don't care about the left. What I'm more interested is in the right. And I think what explains a lot of the hysteria you saw, even from Trump supporters on the right, boils down to really two factors. Number one, nobody knows really for certain what the end game is here. And I want to get to that in a little bit. But nobody knows for certain what the end game is here. Is this permanent tariffs to raise revenue? Are these tariffs a bargaining chip for better trade deals and reshoring some industries? Is this all an elaborate ploy to isolate China? Or a combination of all three of those things? We don't know for sure. And there's a reason for that, I think. It's just my opinion. It might not be fact. But I think there's a reason for that. And I'll get to that, like I said, in a little bit. So that's one factor. Nobody knows for sure what the end game is here. Number two, I think this apoplexy is coming also from free trade absolutists who see tariffs as blasphemy. So I can understand if you think these tariffs are permanent, which we don't know if they're permanent or not. I don't know that, and I don't think anybody does for sure. If you're a free trade absolutist and you think these tariffs are permanent policy across the board, I can understand why you are apoplectic right now, with no patience for people like me who are in kind of the wait and see camp. So, nobody knows for certain what the end game is here, and I think free trade absolutists see these tariffs as permanent policy, and that's why they're really upset, and I understand that. However, I think this entire thing is just a broad negotiation, art of the deal. So I would not expect, and neither should you, for the White House and Donald Trump to reveal their hand. Of course, if it is a broad negotiation, of course you're going to tell all of these countries, no, this is permanent policy of the United States going forward. That's your leverage play. That gets them to the table begging for deals, begging for better terms on trade deals. I think that's what's happening right now. But there was a lot of certainty posited from people who are, I think, probably fall into the second camp, free trade absolutists. A lot of certainty about what Trump is doing, what he's trying to accomplish, when I really don't think anybody knows for sure, including maybe the White House itself. They're kind of watching to see this play out, and then they'll make a move when they see, hey, this is the best possible outcome to this entire ordeal. So they might not even know. I think their ultimate goal probably isolating China, but will they be able to achieve that this go around? I'm not sure. Maybe. They might be able to. Everybody just needs to take a deep breath. I understand if you're close to retirement, seeing the stock market crash and crash as hard as it did on Thursday and Friday, even though it's back to the levels that it was at this time last year, and we'll see what it does today. I can see why you would be really, really perturbed by this. Okay, so you are in your late 50s, mid 60s, and you're just getting ready to retire, and the stock market crashes, and your 401k, Roth IRAs, whatever your retirement accounts. I can understand why you're really concerned about that. I think that's maybe a third group of people as well that explains this hysteria on the right. I hope if you are in that camp, you also understand my camp as well, and people who are even younger than me. I'll just be completely honest with you. I had no retirement at all before a few weeks ago. No retirement fund at all. Now I'm starting to put a little bit into it. So I had no retirement. So I'm not as invested as you are. So I don't have your perspective. But I also think you need to understand my perspective as well. And people who are probably young Gen X and younger. We're going to be paying into Social Security our entire lives and probably not going to get anything back from that. So whatever needs to be done to ensure that there are opportunities for people like us in the future, I hope you'll at least understand, maybe not agree, but I hope you'll understand where some of us are coming from with these at least moves to ensure the American economy can thrive in the future. I think that's the motivation here. So I just think there needs to be a lot more grace, a lot more seeking to understand where people are coming from, because I tried to extend that over the weekend, multiple occasions. I mean, I made a joke that was aimed really at a very specific group of people about how, are the tariffs in the room with you right now? And that blew up. People taking that completely out of, people who I like and respect, intentionally taking that out of context, even after I explained what the motivation was for that. I mean, there's just, this is a coalition government right now. And if you're tearing each other apart over minutia and not seeking to really understand where everybody's coming from, that's going to blow up really, really fast. So that is our analysis for a Monday. Back at it again tomorrow. I'm Aaron McIntyre, and this is the AM Update.